At my son's birthday party, she pulled out an envelope. Said, "It's not a gift, it's a new beginning." I opened it, divorce papers. Then she smiled at the guests and said, "Let's take one last happy photo." I posed beside her for the camera, then walked away before she could see the candle melt. She thought it was a quiet ending. She had no idea what storm was already on its way. So, I booked the table a month in advance. Same place where we celebrated our first anniversary. Back then, she called it our little corner of the world, a quiet booth tucked by the window, with flickering candles and a view of downtown lights. She always said the way the street lamps glowed on the glass made her feel like she was in a different city, somewhere cinematic. I remembered that. I remembered everything. She didn't have to remind me of the date. I had already set the reservation before she even brought it up. But the night before, she smiled at me from the hallway and said, "Don't be late tomorrow." I laughed. "You say that like I ever am." She winked. "Just saying. You know how I get when I'm hungry." I held on to that moment like it meant something. I didn't know it'd be the last time she looked at me like that. I arrived 10 minutes early. I always did. Wore the navy blazer she once said made me look dangerously decent, like I could be in an ad for a watch I couldn't afford. It had been a while since she complimented me like that. I combed my hair back the way she liked. Clean shave, no cologne. She always said she preferred the scent of my skin over anything bottled. And in my coat pocket, I had a little black box. Nothing fancy. A thin silver bracelet, delicate. I saw her admiring it in a shop window 3 weeks ago. She didn't think I noticed. But I did. The host greeted me with that practiced smile. "Reservation for 2? "Yes," I said. "Reeves." He typed something into the computer, paused, then looked up with a slight tilt of the head. "I'm sorry, sir. It looks like your wife called this afternoon. She canceled the reservation." I stared at him. Words fell apart in my throat. "She canceled?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Yes." She said something came up. "Would you still like to be seated?" My feet didn't move, but my voice said, "Yes." I followed him to our usual table. It hadn't changed. Same white tablecloth. Same folded napkins. Same quiet hum of string music in the background. I sat down. The waiter brought water, poured it carefully, like nothing was wrong. I thanked him, tried not to look at the empty chair across from me. I kept glancing at the door like she'd walk in any minute, breathless with apology, blaming traffic or work or anything but what I was beginning to feel. But nothing came. No text. No call. The minutes dragged like hours. My wine went untouched. I picked at the bread. I asked for the check before even ordering dinner. That's when the waiter hesitated again. "Sir, I hope this isn't out of line, but..." I overheard the host. She mentioned another reservation. Across town. Chablis Bistro. About the same time. I didn't answer. I just nodded slowly. Chablis. Loud, trendy, overpriced. Not my style. Hers, though? Definitely. She once said it was too flashy for us. Apparently, it wasn't too flashy for her anymore. I left a tip on the table, stood up, and walked out without saying a word. She hadn't just canceled our dinner. She had replaced it. And I was never supposed to know. I didn't go straight home. I drove around with no destination, just letting the turns decide for me. I had no music on, just the sound of tires slicing through wet pavement and the occasional whisper of my own thoughts creeping in. Every stoplight felt like it was giving me time to change my mind, to rationalize, to excuse her. Maybe it wasn't her. Maybe the waiter got it wrong. Maybe the host misread the name. Maybe I was just tired, and my mind was doing what minds do when they want to protect you, lie. But as I turned onto my street, headlights bouncing off familiar mailboxes, something inside me cracked open. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't paranoid. I was remembering. She had been different lately. Subtle shifts, fewer questions about my day, delayed responses to texts, more time at the gym, but coming home without a drop of sweat. The laugh she used to save for me, suddenly showing up in conversations she thought I couldn't hear. A glance at her screen as she pulled it away just a second too fast. I parked 2 houses down. Sat there for a moment. Hands on the wheel. Engine still running. Then I turned it off. Inside, the lights were on. One in the kitchen, one in the living room. Hers, not mine. She always needed extra light, said it kept her mind from racing. Her bag was on the counter, carelessly tossed like nothing mattered. I stood there staring at it, and the absurdity of it hit me like a slap. She was out tonight, laughing, sipping wine, maybe touching someone else's wrist under the table, while I stood in our kitchen holding a black box that meant nothing now. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Instead, I checked the counter for something, anything, to make this feel real. And that's when I saw it. A receipt. Crinkled, half-folded, still warm from her coat pocket. Chablis Bistro. 2 entrees. A bottle of the exact Sauvignon Blanc she used to say gave her headaches, and dessert for 2. Timestamped. 7:42 p.m. A table for 2. She had made it there just fine. And she'd been laughing, I was sure of it. Somewhere between the third glass and the shared chocolate torte. But what stopped me cold wasn't the total. It was the name on the receipt. Liam Reeves. My name. She had booked it using my name. Not hers. Not anonymous. Not for 2. She had used my identity to make the reservation, so nothing would be traced back. So nothing suspicious would appear in her name. So if I had ever called Chablis, they would have told me I had a table there that night. She knew what she was doing. She wasn't just lying. She was building her story inside mine, wearing my skin, speaking with my voice. And suddenly, every time she smiled at me these past few weeks didn't feel like love. They felt like performance. I folded the receipt once. Then again, put it in my wallet. Not as evidence. As a reminder. Tomorrow, I would become someone else. Tonight, I just needed to feel everything I had tried not to see. She walked in around midnight. The garage door rumbled softly, like it didn't want to interrupt the lie she was carrying. I didn't move. I was sitting in the dark, in the living room, on the far end of the couch, the side she never liked because it didn't have the throw pillow with the embroidered map of Italy. That was her pillow. Everything had a place in this house, including the lies. Her heels clicked against the hallway tile. Confident. Light. Like a woman returning from a normal night. She hadn't even bothered to pretend to sneak in. She turned the corner and saw me. "Oh," she said, startled. "You're still up?" I nodded once. Nothing else. She didn't ask why the lights were off. Didn't ask why I hadn't responded to any of her earlier messages. Maybe she didn't send any. Maybe she didn't need to, because in her version of the story, I was asleep, and she had just finished dinner with a friend I didn't know. She walked to the kitchen, keeping her back to me, as if ignoring me might reset the scene. "I thought you had to stay late," I said, finally. My voice sounded calm, too calm, like it wasn't mine. She opened the fridge, bought herself a few seconds. "Yeah," she said. "It got a little crazy at the office. Sorry I missed dinner." That word, missed, sat in the air like smoke. I said nothing. She grabbed a bottle of water, turned, leaned against the counter. "You okay?" she asked, tilting her head, like the concern had just arrived. I looked at her. Really looked. Hair still curled from the effort. Lipstick slightly faded. And that faint flush of wine on her cheeks that no office job ever cost. I stood up, walked to the hallway, paused. "I went to the restaurant anyway," I said. Her breath caught, just for a second. It was small, barely there, but I saw it. "Oh," she said. "I should have told you sooner. I meant to cancel earlier. I just forgot." I nodded again, slow, steady. "You didn't forget. You replaced it." I didn't yell, didn't accuse. Just said it like a weather report. Silence. She didn't deny it. I walked to the bedroom, closed the door softly behind me. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't explode. I lay in bed with my eyes open, listening to the house breathe around me, the hum of the fridge, the soft creak of her moving through the living room, the distance growing with every quiet second. And somewhere in that stillness, I realized something that hurt more than betrayal. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. Because she didn't expect me to do anything about it. She thought I would stay. She thought silence meant surrender. She thought wrong. The next morning, she made coffee like nothing happened. She hummed to herself in the kitchen. Not a song I recognized. That part stung more than I expected, like even her soundtrack had changed without me noticing. She moved easily through the space, opening drawers, flipping switches, pouring creamer. Her rhythm hadn't skipped. Mine, on the other hand, was gone. I stayed upstairs a little longer than usual, pretending to be buried in emails. Truth was, I was just staring at the same sentence over and over. My head ached from too many thoughts and not enough sleep. But I waited for her to leave first. She knocked on the bedroom door, lightly. "I'm heading out," she said. "Need anything?" "No," I replied. My voice came out flat. Distant. She paused, waiting for more, but I gave her nothing. "Okay," she said, too casually. "See you tonight." I didn't answer. I heard the front door shut, followed by her car backing out of the driveway. I waited another 5 minutes before I exhaled. In the kitchen, her cup still sat on the counter. Lipstick on the rim. Her phone charger left behind. She always forgot things when she was lying, too busy remembering the version of the truth she needed to carry. I stood in the middle of the living room, just looking around. Nothing had changed, but it all felt staged now. Like a theater set where the actors stopped believing their own lines. I went to the closet and pulled out a duffel bag. Not to leave. Not yet. I just needed to see what it felt like to pack something. Shirt, socks, toothbrush. Each item felt like a step away from her. Each zipper closing felt like a door creaking in my chest. I didn't have a plan yet, but I had something else, something stronger than anger. Clarity. I started moving through the house differently after that. Quieter. More deliberate. Watching more than speaking. She didn't notice at first. She was too busy maintaining the story she had built, assuming I'd play along. She smiled when she came home. Told me about her day like we were still on the same page. I nodded. Listened. Never challenged her. And slowly, I saw it, the confusion in her eyes. The way she started watching me. How my silence began to disturb her comfort. She couldn't read me anymore. That's when I knew I was getting somewhere. One night, I pretended to be asleep when she slipped into bed. Her phone buzzed around midnight. She picked it up and turned slightly away, texting with slow, careful taps. Then she turned off the screen and placed it screen down on the nightstand, the way people do when they have something to hide. I said nothing. I just opened my eyes in the dark and stared at the ceiling. Let her keep her rhythm. Let her think I was still part of the script. Because soon, I would rewrite the ending. 3,382 characters. The next few days passed in careful silence. I didn't ask where she was going. Didn't ask when she'd be back. Didn't ask why her phone now lived face down on every surface it touched. I didn't ask, because I already knew, and because the moment you ask, you give them power. You admit confusion. You show need. I wasn't confused anymore. And I certainly didn't need her. She noticed. At first, she filled the silence with more stories. More details. Overcompensating. Monday night, she talked about some new hire at the office who didn't know how to work the printer. Tuesday, it was how the team was just slammed, preparing for a presentation, even though her department had nothing to do with clients. Wednesday, she started wearing new perfume. One I hadn't complimented. One I'd never seen on our shelf. I stayed calm. Measured. Polite, even. But I never gave her what she wanted. Not anger, not jealousy, not warmth. Nothing. I became a mirror. She started watching herself in my reflection, unsure if the image matched who she thought she was. Then, Thursday night, she tried something different. She cooked. I came home to music playing low in the kitchen, lights dimmed, candles on the table. Chicken piccata, salad, wine already breathing. It was the same setup she used to surprise me with when we first moved in. Back when the lies were smaller, and the laughter was still real. Figured we could use a nice dinner, she said, smiling too hard. Just the two of us. I sat, ate slowly, said thank you. She kept glancing up like she was waiting for something, a spark, a crack, a moment where I leaned in and made it normal again. But I didn't. I chewed, swallowed, and asked about the salt. Is this the Malden Flakes, or the fine one? She blinked. What? The salt, I said. You use the flake kind, right? I can tell. She laughed awkwardly. Well, you're, really paying attention. I always did. That was all I said. But it landed. I saw it. Her fork hovered midair, eyes scanning me like she didn't recognize what she was looking at. Later that night, she came to bed early. Wore the silk set I'd bought her 2 birthdays ago. She curled closer, her fingers brushing my arm. I missed this, she whispered. I didn't move. She waited, then pulled away slightly, pretending it didn't matter. She still hadn't realized that she wasn't waiting for me anymore. She was waiting for who I used to be, the man who believed her stories, forgave her absences, who bent over backward not to rock the boat. The man who would have been grateful for one half-hearted dinner, like it could erase the scent of red wine on someone else's breath. But that man wasn't in this house anymore. I stared at the ceiling, letting the quiet stretch long enough to echo. Let her feel what it's like when the performance is over. Let her hear the silence she carved. Friday came, and with it, a different kind of silence. I hadn't spoken to anyone about what was happening. Not yet. It wasn't shame holding me back. It was strategy. The fewer voices in the room, the clearer mine could become. But I needed a sanity check. Someone outside the fog. So I met up with Caleb. He was an old friend, the kind that outlasts jobs, girlfriends, even time. We hadn't talked in months, maybe more, not because of anything bad, just life doing what it does. But the second I texted, You around? He replied, Name the place. We sat at a small bar tucked behind a bookstore downtown. The kind of place where the music was just loud enough to keep conversations private. He ordered bourbon. I stuck with water. You're not drinking? He asked, raising an eyebrow. Trying to stay clear-headed, I said. Been a fog lately. Caleb leaned back, scanning me the way only someone who really knows you can. All right, he said. Talk. I started slow. Just the surface details. The missed dinner. The changed perfume. The silence behind every news story. And then I watched his expression shift from polite listening to something harder. She cheating? He asked bluntly. I didn't answer right away. I didn't need to. He swore under his breath. You sure? Not in the way that matters, I said. But yeah, I'm sure. Caleb nodded, jaw clenched. What are you gonna do? Not what she expects, I said. She thinks I'll either blow up or break down. I'm not giving her either. He stared at me for a moment, then smiled. You always were dangerous when you got quiet. I hadn't told Caleb everything. Not yet. Not about the messages she kept deleting, or the second phone call I overheard at 2:13 a.m. when she thought I was asleep. But it felt good just to say something. To speak a little of the storm out loud. And most importantly, to remember that I wasn't alone. When I got home, she was already in bed, pretending to be asleep. The lamp on her side was still warm. Her robe tossed casually across the chair, like she had staged it. Like she wanted me to see the version of her that looked relaxed and innocent. I stood at the doorway for a moment and watched her. I thought about how many times I'd come home before, eager to crawl into that bed and tell her things. Stupid little things, about bad traffic or weird clients or a dog I saw wearing goggles. All the moments I wanted to share with her. Now I couldn't remember the last time she'd asked about my day. I slipped into the guest room. She didn't follow. Not that night. Not the next. But I knew she noticed. I saw it in the way she hovered in the kitchen a little longer each morning. In the way she paused before unlocking her phone in front of me. In how she asked, "Everything okay?" with a smile that was one hairline crack away from shattering. Everything wasn't okay. But finally, it was starting to make sense. By Saturday, she started testing new moves. She lingered near me more. Hung around in the living room while I read. Asked casual questions. Too casual. Like, have you seen my charger? Or do you know if the laundry's done? They weren't real questions. They were feelers. Fishing lines cast into silence, hoping I'd bite. I didn't. Instead, I noticed things. The way she tapped her nails against her wine glass when she was nervous. The way she only wore that cherry red lipstick when she wasn't with me. The sudden interest in client dinners that popped up every other night. Always last minute. Always too boring to talk about afterward. I started keeping a small notepad in the drawer of the guest room. Not for revenge. Just clarity. I wasn't the one who needed an explanation. Not anymore. But I wanted to see the shape of her story as she built it. I took notes. Dates. Times. Words she used. People she mentioned. Which days she smiled too wide, and which ones she avoided my eyes. It wasn't paranoia. It was pattern recognition. I also noticed she had stopped saying, "I love you." Not all at once. Just gradually. Like someone turning down the volume on a song they no longer liked. At first it vanished from texts, then from phone calls, and finally, from our home, as if the words had expired, and she didn't bother renewing them. She still said goodnight, though. That part made me laugh quietly. How she clung to certain routines like they could prop up everything else she had already let rot. Sunday morning, she stood at the sink in her bathrobe, sipping coffee. I walked in, set a grocery bag on the counter. She glanced over. "You're up early." "Felt like being productive," I said. She nodded. "Want me to help with breakfast?" "I'm good," I replied, and started cracking eggs into a bowl. We stood there in the kitchen, side by side, the way we used to. Except now the silence between us wasn't comfortable. It was surgical. She looked at me like she was trying to read the fine print of a contract she forgot she signed. After a moment, she reached out and touched my arm. "Chris," she said softly, "are we okay?" I looked at her hand, then at her. "We're surviving," I said. It wasn't an answer, but it was honest. She pulled her hand back. A flicker of something crossed her face, maybe fear, maybe realization. Either way, she turned and walked out of the kitchen without another word. I stood at the stove, flipping the omelet, breathing in the scent of butter and thyme. And I felt it again, that strange calm. Like I was floating above everything, watching a version of my life I no longer felt tethered to. Later that night, I found her crying in the shower. I didn't say anything. I just walked past the bathroom, slowly, deliberately, letting the sound of the water and her stifled sobs wrap around me like white noise. She wanted me to fix it, to ask, to pull her back into the story she thought she could still control. But I wasn't the one who broke the silence. She was, and I had finally learned how to live inside it. Monday night, she made lasagna. Not the frozen kind. The real think bechamel sauce, handmade noodles, rosemary from the planter box I forgot we owned. The apartment smelled like a home-cooked memory, but it didn't move me. Not the way she hoped it would. I came home to the table already set. 2 wine glasses. A linen napkin folded on my plate. I thought maybe we could sit down tonight, she said, her voice walking the line between hope and performance. Just talk. I sat. Not because I wanted to talk, but because silence needs a stage, too. We ate quietly at first. She took small bites, glancing up between every chew, waiting for me to soften. I focused on the food. This was your favorite, right? She asked. It was, I said, and nothing more. She smiled tightly. You used to say no one else got the top layer right. I didn't correct her. She was wrong. It wasn't the top layer I loved. It was the moment she used to call me in to help sprinkle the last of the mozzarella, shoulder to shoulder, laughing when she dropped cheese on the floor. That moment wasn't in this dish. Halfway through the meal, she set her fork down and exhaled. Chris, she began, I know I've been off lately. Work's been insane. I've been stressed, and I think I let that bleed into everything. There it was, the almost apology. I stayed quiet. I don't want us to fall apart, she continued. I want to fix this. Whatever this is. I met her eyes. Are you apologizing for something? I asked. Or just trying to stop the fallout? She blinked. What? You said a lot of words, I said, calm as stone. None of them were, I'm sorry. She sat back, stunned. Chris, I'm trying. You're being cold. I'm being clear. She looked down, picked at her napkin. You want me to say I'm sorry? No, I said. I want you to know what for. Her breath caught, just for a second. That's when I knew I wasn't wrong. She hadn't admitted anything, but her silence did. When the plates were cleared, she didn't follow me to the guest room. She didn't knock on the door or try again. But an hour later, I found a note slid under the door. It read, I don't know how we got here. I miss who we were. Please don't give up on me. I sat with that note in my lap, my hand hovering over it like it was something alive. I wasn't angry anymore. That emotion had come and gone, like a brief storm. What remained was colder. Still, like the hush after snowfall. I tucked the note into the drawer and turned off the light. The next morning, she got up early, made coffee, left without saying goodbye. I didn't text her. I went to the gym instead, hit the weights harder than usual, showered slow, took a different route to the store just to see new streets, bought ingredients for a dinner I'd make for myself, not to prove anything, but because I finally wanted to. And for the first time in months, I realized something strange. I hadn't thought about where she was, or who she was with. I didn't care. Not because I hated her, but because I was finally rebuilding something she hadn't touched. Me. By midweek, I could feel her trying to shrink less. She started wearing her hair the way I used to like it, soft curls, loose around her shoulders. Her outfits changed too. Gone were the power suits and sharp heels. In their place, sweaters and jeans. Familiar, gentle things. The kind you wear when you want to look harmless. Remembered. I said nothing. On Thursday, she brought home takeout from the Thai place we used to visit on our early dates. Left it in the kitchen with a sticky note on the counter. Didn't know what you were craving, but I thought of this. B. She still signed her name like we were coworkers. I didn't eat it. I wasn't being cruel. I just couldn't pretend anymore. I had lost the appetite for pretending. Even the pad CEW, my old favorite, didn't register as a gesture. It felt like a reenactment. Like she was playing someone she used to be. Friday morning, she asked if I wanted to go for a walk. A walk. I echoed. Just fresh air. Maybe the park, she said. Like we used to? I stared at her for a second too long. She caught it. You don't have to, she added quickly, backing away. I nodded once. Maybe another time. The truth was, I had already started walking again alone. After work, before bed, earbuds in, no destination. Just movement. I didn't want to share that with her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. That night, I saw her phone screen light up on the coffee table. A name flashed. Lucas. She turned it over quickly, too quickly. She thought I didn't notice. But I wasn't keeping score anymore. I wasn't even in the game. Later, as I poured myself a glass of water, she stood in the doorway like a shadow, arms folded. I can't fix this alone, she said. I didn't respond. I wasn't being cruel. I was done building bridges no one walks across. She waited, then walked away. In the guest room, I took out the notepad again. Added a date. Wrote down. She wants to be seen again, but only because she knows I've stopped looking. I didn't sleep that night, not from pain or confusion, but from clarity. It's a strange kind of insomnia, the peaceful kind. When the questions are finally answered, and the only thing left to do is act. At 3 a.m., she opened my door without knocking. I can't sleep, she whispered. I turned to look at her. She was wearing my old hoodie, the one she used to steal from the dryer. I know, I said. She hesitated. Can I stay here? I sat up. No, I said gently. Not tonight. She blinked fast, nodded, stepped back, and closed the door. The next morning, the sticky note was gone. The takeout containers were in the trash. Her voice was quiet but sharp when she left for work. We didn't speak all day, but for the first time, I felt something I hadn't before. She was the one waiting now, and I was the one who no longer needed to be found. Saturday came with a kind of nervous stillness. The kind that hangs in the air before a storm, not loud, not angry, just loaded. We hadn't spoken in 2 days. Her footsteps were lighter now, careful, like the floor might register regret. My movements, on the other hand, were no longer calculated. I stopped performing detachment. I was detached. I went for my usual walk, but took a different route. Ended up downtown. The sidewalks buzzed with weekend life, coffee cups, strollers, couples moving in sync. I felt strangely apart from it all, but not in a sad way. Just removed. Like a ghost who learned how to enjoy floating. I was halfway through my second lap around the bookstore when I saw her. Emma. She stood across the street in front of a wine bar, holding her phone. Alone. No Lucas. No client dinner. Just her, in that same camel coat she used to wear on our date nights. She hadn't seen me. I watched her glance down the street, check her phone again, then sigh, one of those heavy exhales that crumple the whole body. Her shoulders slumped. Her fingers twitched against her purse strap. It was the first time in weeks I saw her without armor. I didn't cross. I didn't wave. I kept walking, and she disappeared behind me like background noise. A few blocks later, my phone buzzed. A message. From her. Hey. Just checking in. No punctuation. No emoji. Just that plain sentence that tried to erase everything in one line. I didn't reply. I let it sit there, unread, like a voicemail from the past. I went home, cooked dinner, played some jazz, and fell asleep with the lights on. Sunday morning, another message. This time, a photo. It was us, taken 2 years ago on the Ferris wheel in Santa Monica. My arm around her. Her eyes half laughing. We looked good there, sun-kissed and silly. But what struck me most was how I couldn't remember how that version of me felt. There was no caption. Just the picture. I looked at it for a long time. Then I pressed and held it until the trash icon appeared. Tap. Gone. That afternoon, I ran into Kieran, a mutual friend we hadn't seen in months. We used to do board game nights with him and his wife, back when things were simpler. Man, Kieran said, giving me a look. I heard about everything. You okay? I nodded. I'm good. He hesitated. I guess you already know. She and Lucas didn't last. I said nothing. He continued. It kind of fell apart right after that dinner. Word got around. Nobody really talks to her anymore, not like before. Her sister unfollowed her. I think she moved out, actually. Again, I nodded. He scratched his head. Sorry, that was probably too much. It's all right, I said. Thanks for letting me know. We parted ways. I walked the long way home, through the park, past the vendor who still sells roasted peanuts like he did when Emma and I first moved in together. The city looked different now, less like a maze, more like a map. I wasn't lost in it anymore. That night, I passed her building. I didn't plan to. She was sitting on the steps, hunched over, earbuds in, staring at the pavement like it might offer answers. She looked up just once. Not at me. I was far enough away to be invisible. And that's when I realized. I didn't feel heavy anymore. There was no ache. No longing. Just air. Clean, still air. I kept walking. Not out of spite. But because I didn't live there anymore. Not in the building. Not in that version of my life. Not in her gravity. She had stopped being my center of orbit. And I had finally started spinning on my own. I didn't return her messages. Not out of anger, but because they didn't belong to my life anymore. They felt like postcards from a city I no longer lived in. That Monday, I moved out of the guest room. Not into our old bedroom, no. I signed the lease on a new apartment across town. A small loft with exposed brick, high ceilings, and a single window that caught the sunrise just right. It wasn't much, but it felt mine in a way our shared space never did. Emma didn't ask where I was going. She just noticed the absence, the toothbrush missing, the drawer empty, the sound of me gone. And then came the final shift, the one that told me everything had truly changed. I got the job. That design agency downtown, the one I'd applied to 6 months earlier and forgotten about, emailed me out of the blue. Said they'd pulled up my portfolio again. Said they liked the revisions. Said they wanted to bring me in for a meeting. I didn't tell Emma. I didn't even mention it to Kieran or anyone from that old circle. I just went. Walked into the office with nothing to prove and no desperation in my breath. Just a quiet kind of readiness. And I got it. Full time. Better pay. Creative lead. They handed me the offer, and I took the train home with it folded neatly in my jacket. That night, I made a drink. Sat by the window in my new place. Watched the city lights twitch awake. And for the first time in forever, I didn't feel like I was trying to earn anything. No approval. No space at the table. No good job from someone who barely looked up from their phone. The next weekend, I hosted a small dinner. Nothing big, just 3 friends from the new job. My upstairs neighbor who turned out to be a jazz pianist, and a girl named Leah from the coffee shop downstairs who knew how to make people laugh without making a scene. We sat on cushions around a mismatched table I built myself. We ate pasta, passed wine, and played old records. And no one interrupted me. No one made jokes that didn't land or forgot I existed halfway through a sentence. When I spoke, people listened. When I laughed, it echoed. Leah stayed behind to help clean up. She found one of my notebooks under the table and flipped through it. "You write?" she asked. "Not really," I said, embarrassed. She smiled. "Looks like really to me." She didn't ask who the lines were about. She didn't need to. Some people just understand the shape of pain without needing its name. After she left, I found a sticky note on the notebook. "Next dinner, my place. My turn to cook." I smiled. Didn't overthink it. Just tucked the note between the pages. That night, Emma sent me another message. I miss what we had. No punctuation. No photo this time. Just that short sentence, like a match struck too late. I opened it. Typed a reply. Deleted it. Closed the app. Some messages aren't unanswered because we don't care. Some stay unanswered because we finally do. The next morning, I walked past our old building again. The windows were shut. The blinds drawn. For a second, I thought I saw her silhouette. But I didn't slow down. I didn't look up. I just kept walking into the sunlight. Because I wasn't avoiding her anymore. I was simply heading in a different direction. The new place creaked in the mornings. Not from age, it was newer than most of the buildings I had lived in. But the floorboards had a way of settling after sunrise, like they were stretching awake just like me. It made me feel less alone. I kept my routine simple. French press coffee, jazz in the background, a to-do list on a chalkboard. No clutter, no TV in the bedroom. It wasn't ascetic, it was intentional. I was building a life where I didn't have to raise my voice to be heard. One afternoon, I stopped by the little bookstore on the corner and ran into Mr. Keaton, the old man who used to own the hardware store near our old place. He looked at me for a long second before recognition softened his face. "Chris," he said, "heard you moved." "I did." He nodded. "Good. That side of town never appreciated you right." It was such a strange thing to say. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "How's Emma?" Just a quiet truth that hung in the air between us like dust in the sun. Before we parted, he handed me a book. "You'll like this one," he said. "It doesn't end like you think, but it ends right." That night, I read it cover to cover. And he was right. Not about the plot, but about the feeling. It didn't end with fireworks or apologies. It ended with clarity. A few days later, I was cleaning out an old box when I found the invitation. The one to that dinner. It had been slipped into my jacket pocket, cream paper, gold lettering, embossed initials. I remember now how carefully she had handed it to me back then, like it meant something. I stared at it for a moment. Then I walked to the balcony, struck a match, and let the flame take it from my hand. The ash twisted once in the breeze and disappeared without a sound. I didn't need to keep reminders of a version of me that forgot himself. Sunday morning, I got a knock on the door. It was Leah, holding 2 coffees and a tiny cactus in a ceramic pot. "I figured your place needed something alive that bites less than me," she joked. I let her in. We sat on the floor again, laughing, letting time pass without urgency. She didn't fill the room with words, and I didn't feel like I had to explain my silences. We were just there. Present. Real. At one point, she asked, "Do you miss her?" I thought for a second. "No," I said. "I miss who I thought I was with her." She nodded like she understood. Because she did. That night, I finally unpacked the last box. It had followed me from 3 apartments ago, always sealed, always in the corner. Inside were letters, cards, small keepsakes. I took out each one, read them slowly, and placed them in a paper bag. Then I walked them down the street and left them in the donation bin. Not because someone else needed them, but because I didn't. That was the difference. I wasn't trying to erase the past anymore. I just stopped dragging it behind me like proof that I once mattered. And that, more than anything, felt like freedom. The Monday staff meeting ran late, but I didn't mind. I liked the sound of voices I respected, ideas that didn't need to be filtered or fought for. I took notes, asked a question, got nods that meant, "Good point, not wait your turn." It was subtle, but it mattered. Afterward, my boss patted my shoulder. "Keep doing what you're doing, Chris. You've got good instincts." That night, I walked home under a sky that had finally stopped pretending it needed clouds. At home, my apartment felt warm, not just from the radiator, but from the quiet hum of something stable. I turned on a lamp, put on Sam Cooke, started dinner without thinking twice. No waiting for anyone to come home. No second portions out of habit. Just one clean plate. Then my phone buzzed. A message. From an unknown number. But I knew who it was. "Emma, I passed by your old place today. I didn't expect it to feel like this." There was a photo attached. Our street, now half-shadowed in dusk. Her caption was trying to say something deeper, but I wasn't listening anymore. I didn't respond. Not because I was punishing her, but because some conversations end best when they're never had. That Friday, I hosted another dinner. This time with a few more chairs, a better wine, and mismatched napkins Leah had insisted I let her bring. People came early, laughed loud, stayed late. We sat on the floor again, because it had become a tradition. Someone brought a guitar. Someone else read a bad poem. Nobody tried to impress anyone. And yet, somehow, I'd never felt more surrounded by a real. After midnight, when everyone had left but Leah, we stood at the sink together, drying plates. She looked at me, gently, but directly. "You're different now," she said. "How so?" "You're not reaching." I paused. Let the words land. Because she was right. I wasn't performing peace anymore. I wasn't pretending to be okay while carrying all the noise inside me. The noise was gone. She leaned on the counter and added, "I hope whoever she was, she sees that." I gave her a small smile. If she does, it won't matter. This version of me? She never met him. There was a time when that thought would have hurt. Now, it felt like triumph. We stepped out onto the fire escape, 2 mugs of tea in hand, and looked out over the neighborhood. It wasn't fancy, not polished, but it was mine. I thought about all the things I'd let go of. The arguments I didn't have. The explanations I never gave. The door I never slammed. And yet somehow, I'd walk through it anyway. I was finally living a life I didn't have to defend. Later that night, I pulled out my old journal. Not to spill anger or record pain, but to acknowledge something quieter. Progress. On the last page, I wrote, "They didn't break me. They revealed me." Then I closed it and slid it back into the drawer. Not to forget, but because I no longer needed it open to remember who I was. The seasons changed without fanfare. Leaves browned, curled, and scattered like old regrets. The cold came quietly, soft and clean, like the absence of something that used to ache. Life had shape now. Most days I walked to work. 10 blocks of crisp air and morning light. I passed the same bakery, the same man with a stubborn beagle, the same street performer playing piano under a scaffolding. Routine used to mean stuck. Now it meant chosen. I had lunch with people who remembered my birthday. My emails got replies. My ideas got greenlit. I didn't have to prove I belonged anymore. I just did. One night after work, I came home to find a small package on my doorstep. No label. Just my name in neat, familiar handwriting. I knew it was from her before I even picked it up. Inside, a framed photo of us. One of the few where we both looked happy and unguarded. Before all the cracks. Before the dinner. Before I learned what silence really meant. No note. No explanation. Just the image. I stared at it for a long time, then turned it face down on the counter. Later that evening, the phone buzzed. "Emma, I know you're doing better. I can feel it. I miss what we had. 12 words. Not a single one was an apology. Not a single one asked how I had felt, what I had carried, what I had lost. Just nostalgia for a version of me that no longer existed. I didn't respond. I didn't even open the chat fully. Some things didn't need closure, they needed distance. A few days passed. Then she called. Not text, not voicemail. A real call. The kind you only make when you think maybe, just maybe, you'll be forgiven if your voice trembles enough. I let it ring. Let the sound float through the room until it became part of the background. And then I turned it off. Because if she truly missed what we had, she'd have remembered what broke it. Not the dinner, not the party, but the years of erosion she called normal. That weekend, I hosted my third dinner. Smaller this time. Quieter. A few friends. A few candles. The windows fogged from laughter and soup and a warmth I didn't have to earn. Near the end of the night, Leah handed me her phone. You have to see this, she whispered. It was a viral post. A relationship coach talking about accountability and emotional blindness. Thousands of comments. One of them, buried deep, was from a user named Silent Before the Fall. Sometimes you don't realize what you destroyed until the person you broke learns how to thrive without you. Leah raised her eyebrows. Sound familiar? I shrugged. Could be anyone. She smiled. Maybe. But it isn't you anymore. That night, I took the photo she sent and dropped it into the bin. Not out of spite, but because holding on to the past out of politeness is just another form of self-betrayal. She had her chance. She used silence as a weapon. So I learned to use it as armor. And the beautiful thing about silence? It never begs for attention. It just is. I spent the last morning of the year alone, but not lonely. I brewed coffee without checking my phone. Read an old book I had once tried to impress someone with. This time, I read it because I liked it. And that was enough. By noon, I had cleaned the apartment top to bottom. Not for guests. Just for me. There was a peace in the quiet, a kind of knowing that didn't need to be spoken. Mid-afternoon, I took a walk through the old neighborhood. The one where I used to hold my breath every time we passed by her brother's brownstone. Now, I strolled past it like any other house. The blinds were drawn. The wreath was faded. The glow that once made me feel like an outsider pretending to belong was gone. That chapter had closed. Not with a door slammed, but with the soft rustle of a page turned. On my way back, I stopped at the corner cafe I used to avoid. It was the same place where she and I had argued in whispers once, trying to look like a normal couple unraveling politely. This time, I ordered a tea, sat by the window, let the past pass by without me. When I got home, I opened my journal. Not the old one full of wounds and weight. A new one. Blank. I flipped to the first page and wrote. I was never invisible, just overlooked by people who refused to see anything outside their comfort. Then I paused, not to find more words, but to let that one sink. Comfort. That's what she chose. That's what they all chose. Comfort over truth. Familiarity over growth. Image over intimacy. But me? I chose to change. And that, I realized, was why I had one without playing their game. Around 6 p.m., I got one last message. No words this time. Just a heart emoji. No name. But I knew. I didn't block it. I didn't respond either. Some people don't get closure. They get clarity. And clarity looks like this. A man making dinner in his quiet apartment. A record playing something soft in the background. A calendar with new plans that don't include explanations. Later that evening, Leah stopped by. No invitation. Just a knock and 2 glasses. I brought sparkling cider, she said, holding it up like a peace treaty. We toasted on the balcony, wrapped in coats and the kind of comfort that didn't come at the cost of identity. As the clock ticked toward midnight, she asked, "What do you think your biggest lesson was this year?" I thought for a long time. Watched the city blink and breathe below us. Finally, I answered, that I never needed their table. I just needed to remember I could build my own. She smiled and clinked her glass to mine. Well, yours has better music anyway. We laughed. And when the fireworks began in the distance, tiny bursts of color over rooftops I no longer watched with longing, I didn't wish for anything. Because for the first time in years, I already had enough.